Hello and welcome to this xpubs on-demand webinar. xpubs organizes Europe's largest and most solutions-focused XML conference. As well, xpubs brings you webinars, case studies, and white papers to educate on and promote the use of structured information standards. For more information on xpubs events, visit www.x-pubs.com. In this event, content management strategist Scott Abel will be interviewing career and performance consultant Emma C. Hamer on one of the most critical issues of CMS success, change management. Now presenting CMS and Change. Love it, hate it, master it.
Hello, my name is Scott Abel. Many of you know me as the Content Wrangler. I'm a content management evangelist and a speaker at conferences and a writer of many articles on the subject. And I found the topic of change management to be kind of one of the most important ones that cause problems for people that are trying to move to a content management environment, trying to figure out how to do it. Often involves a selection of tools and kind of moving forward without thinking through the process and understanding the impact change may have. So when I spoke with the folks at xpubs, I asked them if we could invite Emma Hamer to speak with us today because she's a change and performance management consultant that knows a lot about this subject. So I'm going to ask Emma if she's on the line. Emma, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Would you do a little introduction and tell people a little about yourself and then and perhaps start into why this topic is so important to you, and we'll move on from there.
Well, as Scott said, I'm a change and performance management consultant, and generally I help organizations figure out why whatever benefits they were promised are not materializing. Technology very often takes the blame, but in my opinion that's not fair really, because technology factors in for about 10% in the successful implementation. The remaining 90% is all about procedural change, how effective that happens, and procedural change is of course about how things get done, and the cultural and behavioral changes that are required to make use of the system. I used to be a xpubs manager for many years, so although I have kept abreast of developments, and I understand the environment. What fascinates me about content management is that it's a potentially game-changing concept. I've been doing a lot of work applying Six Sigma methodology to performance improvement, and that's of course all about the customer. And when I come at content management from that arena, and Six Sigma of course evaluates business processes and redesigns them, and is also a massively impactful change, if I could call it that. I also make the comparison to enterprise resource planning and what it did for supply chain management and cost control. And I believe that content management systems will do the same thing for customer interaction. I'm also of the opinion that organizations with the best personalized customer service will be the ones that can maintain competitive advantage.
Wow, that's a mouthful right there. How do people react when you say that?
They're like, that sounds really impressive, but I'm not quite getting what you're talking about. So hopefully by the end of today's session, people will have a slightly better idea of what context I put that into.
Let's take a look at that, because it seems like that change is the issue. And as the slide notes, first we want to ask, do we really have to?
Well, some will say yes, and that they include me. Basically, change is not an option. To stand still is to move backwards, is often said. But here's the current situation. There's a tremendously rapidly increasing amount of information, and the quality of that information, or being able to access the information that you actually need, is deteriorating. There's more and more diverse. It's across more and more platforms. There's less structure. There's a much greater need for people to have a sense of what does it all mean and how reliable is it. Frankly, it's a huge mess. Interesting little factoid that just the other day the Butler Group from the UK published a report on document collaboration that states, amongst other things, that staff generally spend some 30% of their time simply trying to find the information to complete their tasks. Another 50 to 25% of their time is spent on non-productive information-related tasks. I'm quoting from the report. When you pull that together, that's half a workday. That position is untenable for any organization and exponentially more so for information-heavy ones. We almost have no time left to actually get any work done because we're spending all our time trying to find the information to do the work. The report also concludes that wikis and blogs are here to stay and that document authoring and collaboration tools are going to have to integrate with those systems. And the whole concept of a document as it is a piece of paper with printed matter on it, I don't think that's valid anymore. If I had to hazard a guess, I'd say about 50% of information that users obtain these days doesn't come in a printed form.
Yeah, and I'd say that's important for us to talk about for just a second. Is that we're changing already. In other words, culture in general is changing. The way that we use computers is changing.
Absolutely.
And yet our perception is that things work the same as they did 2 or 3 years ago, and that's certainly not the case. And what I'd like to point out is we often think that we buy a software tool to solve a problem. And yet what we're talking about is not a software tool problem, is it?
No, I don't think so. In fact, if you don't change what you're doing, then the software is just going to make you do whatever stupid things you were doing before faster. So it's not just the software. It's clearly we need to change and radically rethink the way we produce information and the way we disseminate it. It's no longer a question of should we change, it's more of how quickly can we change to keep up, and in other words, when do we change?
You've got some examples, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, in my mind, it's a matter of organizational survival. Let me share a couple of examples. This happened not too long ago, actually, only about 2.5 years ago. A commercial airline that hadn't passed an FAA audit of their maintenance bulletin documentation system had its operating ceiling reduced from 33,000 feet to 22,000 feet. Of course, at that height, aircraft burn approximately 25% more fuel. Aircraft fuel is very expensive. Moreover, it can't reach its optimal cruising speed, so planes never arrived on time anymore. The result was that within 6 months of the FAA audit, the company went bust, 3,400 people lost their jobs, and tens of thousands of passengers were left stranded, just because they didn't have a content management system. You can imagine that in, for instance, the pharmaceutical industry, one mistake that didn't get caught because it didn't come from the same central repository on the dosage information for a doctor can cost lives. And you can just see the headlines. Drug companies printing mistake kills 28 children.
Wow.